Did Petr Yan get robbed in his last fight against Sean O'Malley at UFC 280? I'm going to be getting into my thoughts on that fight, basically the whole fight in itself. And then, yeah, I'm just going to go through what I think of the fight, their performances in general. Did I think it was a robbery or not? How I scored the fight watching it live. Because I think this is pretty important. A lot of ideas are going around there. I want to say it's a little bit split in half, is what I'm noticing now as of Wednesday. It seems like people are starting to come around that it's a little bit of a closer fight and it wasn't necessarily a robbery, but I think it still leaned a little bit more towards the robbery side. But I'm going to get into that real quick, what I think about it. And then for a quick reminder and note, I was like traveling this weekend and things like that. So full card predictions for Cater versus Allen this weekend will be out either tonight or tomorrow. And yes, that's all I want to say for that. But right into this fight, did I think it was a robbery? No, I did not. I actually had I'm gonna get in this real quick. I actually had live scoring this fight. I had an O'Malley in 1 and 3. Probably like one of the few people that actually had that. I thought O'Malley did more damage on the feet in round 1, and I thought that big cut that he opened up in round 3 was a big difference maker in that third round. It felt like even the ground and pound takedown that Yan got towards the end of the round, it didn't feel like those shots were big enough to like make a big impact on the judging. So that's why I give it to O'Malley, the real big cut in that fight, the real big damage in that round, the real difference in damage, if you would like to say that. So I definitely gave O'Malley the third round. Second round, it was looking O'Malley for the first part because he really hurt Yan super badly in that second round, and Yan hurt him really bad. And then Yan was able to win that second round. First round is the round that everyone's deciding and everyone's going over. A lot of people actually had 30-27 Yan, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. Like, you can kind of see it, but it just doesn't make sense. It feels, I guess I'll get into this more a little bit about the biases in media and things like that about Sean O'Malley and Yan. But just getting into the fight itself, I do think the term robbery is used way too much than it should be. I think for actual robberies, it's not used enough. And for certain fights, it's used too much, especially for people that want a certain guy to win. So I'll go over a couple examples of that. Like for this example, Sean O'Malley, as much as he's liked quite a bit by the casual fans, a lot of MMA media and a lot of hardcore fans do not like him. And a lot of fans in general do not like him. He's a very entertaining fighter, but you can see this, like, anytime the UFC tries to make a new star, like Paddy Pimblett, they just hate on the guy. Oh, he's not fighting a ranked opponent, things like that. He fought the number one dude, super competitive in the fight. Again, even in Jan's last fight against Aljamain Sterling, people were saying it was a robbery for that one also, especially in that, I believe it was the first round that people were going to. But people said that was a robbery for that one. People still hold that belief. I think it was a little bit more towards Aljamain's side that they thought he actually won. So, like, the differences in percentages of people who actually thought Aljamain won and Sean O'Malley won, I think it was a little bit bigger for Aljamain than it was Sean O'Malley. I still, because again, people didn't like Aljamain Sterling because of that first fight versus Yan, where he got kneed in the head, and it wasn't a good way to win a bout, that's for sure. But you saw the bias come in there. I think Yan has a lot of pretty big fans too. But for this fight, I think calling it 30-27 is ridiculous. I think calling it a robbery is ridiculous. But for examples of the term robbery being used, especially recently, Burns versus Chimaev, a lot of people said Burns was robbed in that fight. I think it was probably about 50% after the fight was done. Maybe it moved over towards it wasn't a robbery, it was a super close fight. A lot of people were saying it was a super close fight. I just don't see how Burns was robbed. I thought Chimaev won that fight, but very narrowly. It was a super close fight. It could have gone either way. But I think the right guy was Chimaev. For, again, Gamrot Tsarukyan, I thought Tsarukyan was supposed to win, but a lot of people were saying robbery. In that case, it wasn't too big a robbery. It was just a one punch and things like that. For the Cater Emmett fight, I mean, you can kind of make a idea that it was kind of a robbery, but again, it was a close fight, but there was differences in rounds there where you could see Cater definitely winning one of those rounds, and they didn't give it to him. So you can make the argument of a robbery. I don't think it was that close of a fight like these other ones. But for people that don't want to talk about it, Adesanya versus Whitaker 2. You could say Robert Whitaker was robbed in that fight. I think some people had him 48, 47, 49, 46 in that fight. I think you could make the argument that he was robbed in that fight. But again, it's Adesanya. You have all his fans saying that he wasn't robbed. You have the corporate UFC wanting to get involved there, making sure it's not a robbery, kind of like this. But the fighters don't like O'Malley. I'm sure the fighters don't like the treatment of O'Malley too. The fighters don't like O'Malley. I'm sure because of his style or whatever, or like how he looks. And a lot of the hardcore older fans don't like O'Malley because of his looks and how he fights. It's kind of like a new Gen Z way of fight. Like, I don't even know not like his style of fighting, but like his look and how he attracts his fans they don't like. But again, I think it's just a big bias against O'Malley, which is what you're seeing for this decision. Again, I do think it was Jan should have won. After rewatching the fight, Weasel covered it too. The first round was super close. It went to aggressiveness. I feel like if it ever goes to aggressiveness in a fight where they split rounds and it goes straight to the second part of the rules where Jan was the one being aggressive and that's what won him the round, I think you can't call that a robbery at all, especially if it's even on the feet, even in the grappling. You can say Jan slammed him on the ground and that's probably greater than O'Malley's back take towards the end, but they still are fight-ending positions that you can do. Not necessarily slam, but the slam does a little bit of damage. But again, it was split on the feet. You can argue about the grappling a little bit in the first round. If it goes to aggressiveness, I don't see how that's a robbery at all. But again, I think I was the only one of the few people that actually had O'Malley winning 1 and 3. I know Guru said it was possibly 30-27, and he's like, you could see it on his face like 20 minutes later. He's like, I can see how people can say O'Malley won. Super close fight. So again, extremely close fight. This is not a robbery. I think it's used way too much for the wrong fights. You saw the bias with Burns. A lot of people wanted Burns to win that fight versus Chimaev, especially after that first round where it was super competitive. The whole fight was super competitive, but especially during the fight as it started to get more and more competitive, as it wasn't like a destruction that Chimaev normally wins by, people were going for Burns quite a bit. But again, I think it's still a little split on robbery or not. But again, super close fights are not a robbery. We can't pick and choose our biases with fights that are robberies or not. But again, I had Jan winning this fight, just so you know. So if I were to be biased towards someone, it would be Jan winning this fight because I wanted to get my prediction right. And then O'Malley, I guess you could say I was rooting for him because the UFC kind of needs another star with Conor McGregor not as active anymore. But even the argument some people will make is, I've seen this a couple times before. I don't know what the other fight was, but you have the journalists making what they thought the fight was. You had like 5 people saying 30-27, which is absolutely ridiculous. I have tons of people saying 29-28 Jan. I think one person said O'Malley. I'm not even sure though. I don't know how that's important to anything. Maybe what you have all these people that cover MMA that score a fight a certain way, but do they know the judging criteria? I don't know. You can't really make a decision on that at all. Some of these fighters, it's hard to believe they don't really know the judging criteria either. You can say Jan won the fight, but a robbery is a little ridiculous. It wasn't 30-27 Jan. But again, that's just my opinion, I guess. A robbery, I don't think you can make the case for 30-27 Jan. I don't think you can make the case for it if you're going by the judging criteria. A lot of people don't know that. Especially, I think the commentary, from what I heard, I wasn't really listening to the commentary, but what I heard after, they're a little biased against O'Malley. I think they're open or actively scoring rounds for Jan again. I hate it when they do that. You can say it's close rounds or whatever, or you lean this way, but again, I don't know if that commentary team likes Sean O'Malley or not. Let's be real. Like, I feel like the commentary is generally pretty consistent with their takes on O'Malley and his fights. So that kind of thing. But again, I can't really throw everything on bias. People will believe what they want. I don't think it's a robbery. You can say Jan won this fight, but I don't think you can say it's a robbery, in my opinion. But moving on to how this fight was, it was actually an amazing fight. I was not expecting this to be the fight of the night, basically. This was the most competitive fight, the most fun to fight I watched. I was so impressed with Sean O'Malley. His first big test, especially after that Pedro Munoz fight, I was a little worried by him because he wasn't as engaged with Pedro Munoz. But this was a huge step up for him. He looked extremely impressive. You can make the argument that he outstruck Jan on the feet, and so why Jan was going for the takedowns quite a bit. But again, super impressive performance. I'm surprised. I can't be the only one who thought this, but Sean O'Malley's chin is actually pretty good. He took a huge shot from Jan and still was standing. He was a little wobbly. He's like, you could see in his face that he's kind of like stunned, got taken on the ground, and you can see him like trying to wake back up, kind of. Not like that he was like out, but trying to focus back again, like he got really hurt. But he ate a lot of Jan's big shots. But I think even in the third round, he ate a couple big shots of Jan and was still fighting. Super impressive from Sean O'Malley. Hurt Jan in the fight. You don't really see that much to Jan. Let's be real. Jan doesn't really get hurt. I don't think he even got hurt much in all his other fights. I'm trying to think, like Sandhagen, I don't think he even really got hurt. I think Dodson was probably maybe the last time he got hurt. But Sean O'Malley hurt him in the second round extremely badly. Luckily, Jan was able to hurt Sean O'Malley pretty badly in that same round. So basically, it kind of offsets on damage there. And then Jan got the takedown with that, so he's able to do damage on the ground there. That's probably what leaned Jan's way a little bit more in that round and was able to land some more damage in that round. But again, Sean O'Malley looking super impressive. For ranking changes, we saw that this morning. Sean O'Malley at number 1 after being number 11. I think that's a little ridiculous. I get what the UFC is trying to do. Matchmakers say they don't make the rankings. I don't know who does, but it seems like they know exactly what the UFC wants to do. But again, very impressive performance by Sean O'Malley. I don't even know what to do here. I think Cheeto went to number 4 or 5. Jan went down to 2. I like that Jan went down to 2. Fair enough for him. It's enough to where like the fans will get angry about it. But Sean O'Malley at number 1 is pretty interesting for sure. Recently, Ariel Helwani said that Cejudo and Aljamain is what's being focused on right now for the Parth card. Another interesting situation there. I don't know what they're trying to do with that. I would think that they would want to do Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling as much as they can, but maybe they're looking at the fan backlash and they're like, I don't know if we can put him in a fight with the champion right now, and people will get angry and people will turn against the UFC. People think our fights are rigs and things like that, judging and all that. But you could do Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera. 5 rounds, it's going to look a little iffy for Sean O'Malley, but he might be able to pull through. 3 rounds, if you want Sean O'Malley to win that fight, do 3 rounds for Sean O'Malley. I think he can outstrike Chito Vera. The first fight, believe it or not, is a little fluky. You know, even though people don't want to say that. Perennial nerve kick is extremely rare. If Chito Vera wanted to do that in all his other fights, he would. But you can't because it's a little fluky. Again, he still won the fight, so still good on him, but it is a little fluky finish. But that fight should be made. Chito Vera versus Sean O'Malley, or Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling if they can't do the Cejudo fight. Jan, I don't know who he fights. Jan versus TJ. If TJ still wants to make a run at it, he's getting a little older. You can do Cruz versus TJ. You have a lot of interesting fights at bantamweight now because of Sean O'Malley. We have he definitely belongs in that division. He belongs at the top part of that division too. You do get a little worried against Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley because of the ground game, because he did get taken down quite a bit by Petr Yan. He did a good job defending. I think there was a couple fouls that he committed to that does get a little annoying, but he did look very impressive in that fight. So there's a lot of fights that the UFC could do. I know they tried to do Corey Sandhagen versus Chito Vera, and then Corey Sandhagen couldn't make weight. Corey Sandhagen also took a lot of damage in his last fight. I think he got hurt. He got dropped at one point, and then I think he took a little bit of damage. It was an insane amount of damage, but quite a bit of damage. You can make Chito Vera versus Corey Sandhagen for 5 rounds. I would love that fight. That's a fight that I would love to see 5 rounds. You know, I think Corey Sandhagen wins that fight, but Chito Vera, with his knockout power and things like that, how explosive he is, like randomly, he has a certain spots, like he'll get outstruck the whole round and then hit like one head kick or one punch and then just KO you. It would be a very interesting fight, especially since Cheeto kind of struggled a little bit with Dominic Cruz. Was able to catch him though, but that's Dominic Cruz, a way older Dominic Cruz with a shin, not that much there. Now you look at a Corey Sandhagen who's a little bit more, I'd say like a more modernized Dominic Cruz with the better chin, a little bit better striking at this point too. So you have to look at that fight. That fight would be super interesting to look at. If they can't do Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling because they don't want to, or they're going to do Aljamain Sterling versus Cejudo, you can do Aljamain Sterling versus Cheeto Vera. I don't know if the UFC should put him in 5 rounds. 5 rounds would be very dangerous for him. You could also do Cheeto Vera versus Jan, which would be a fun fight in 5 rounds too, if you want to do Sean O'Malley. Again, there's so many things you can do in that bantamweight division. Super impressive fight for Sean O'Malley. Again, Jan looked pretty good too, but when you're that number 1 guy, you kind of want to try and finish Sean O'Malley in that fight. A lot of people were not as impressed with Petr Yan in that fight. But again, great division. I do not think it was a robbery. I think it was a super close fight, and super close fights are not robberies. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time. Again, full card predictions for Cater versus Allen is coming out either tomorrow or tonight. I'll try and get them out as soon as possible. Let's get back rolling. We have quite a bit of cards coming up. We have Marina Rodriguez versus Amanda Lemos coming up too. So we'll see. Well, we'll see how that goes. Not excited for it, but it's a solid fight. Anyways, getting off topic in this video. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time.